Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Crimes, Killers, Cults, and Beer. This is a Patreon episode, obviously, because you're listening to it on Patreon. But we have a guest. We have two guests. We have Sarah and David from Macabre Emporium. It's a really good podcast that I enjoyed. I've met their acquaintance here recently. How's it going?
It's going, and that was Salem. We may or may not have heard since he's kind of mouthy. He's one of our three cats that we have. He's a all black cat. So you might hear some of the other ones in the background. So I apologize if that bothered you, but sorry, but not sorry at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So our listeners are used to hearing cats.
Okay.
Yeah, you say that now. Just wait till the mouthy one comes in.
Oh, he's got several mouthy ones, and occasionally they don't get along, and there's some of our episodes you'll hear like a cat fight in the background.
Oh, jeez.
I get along pretty well, so you won't hear too much of that.
Yeah,
usually they just come in here and sleep.
It didn't happen very often, but it did happen a couple times. So, tell our listeners a little bit about your podcast.
All right, so Macabre Emporium was found on the foundation of no big six names. So the big six names, as we have compiled our list, is we're not doing stories on Jeffrey Dahmer, Richard Ramirez, Ed Kemper, David Berkowitz, aka Son of Sam, Ted Bundy, and every time we do this, I always forget that last one.
Ed Gein.
BTK?
No, John Wayne Gacy. I just remembered.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, all of the same names you hear pounded over and over. Elsewhere, you're not hearing them on a Macabre Emporium podcast, other than a reference point as so this is like so and so basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We also do some paranormal stories. I've done a paranormal story on what's known as the Ackley House, or also known as the Ghostbuster Defense in the state of New York, where they have to legally disclose if a house is actually haunted or not because of this house, and some crazy history as well too that I'm going to be sharing with Bill here that he has not heard.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sarah, she does a lot of true crime. She does mostly true crime.
Yep.
We also do origin stories on things like random things. Like I've done an origin story on ice cream, and then driving past the cemetery one day, I got curious about that. I've done an episode on that as well.
So according to New York, then ghosts are real?
And yes and no. It's one of those episodes you're gonna have to listen to hear the story.
Okay.
But
I'm intrigued.
you see the pictures around in October every once in a while of a realtor sign that says not haunted on it. This case is actually has to do with that because a potential buyer sued the lady that owned the house for not disclosing the house was haunted after they were going to purchase the house. So, they actually did buy the house, and then they were in the process of buying it, backed out because of all the alleged paranormal activity that was going in it, and then they sued her for the money basically for it.
Okay.
So it's just a basic brief overview with it. So judge ruled that it has to be disclosed if a house is actually haunted or not.
All right. Well, even if it is or it isn't, sometimes even if it isn't, it can be like the Conjuring case.
Right.
My friends in Murder Coaster, they just released the true story of what happened with the Conjuring, and
right.
Going back to the Bathsheba, the alleged spirit. Interesting episode. That's their current episode. He Murder Coaster Matthew was the guy that sat in for me on the Peter Curtin episode.
Okay.
The part 1 and part 2. So, but I listened to that one today, and well, I learned a lot. But, and I just want to go ahead and on record. All right, so let her rip. I am intrigued.
So I'm sure we kind of all grown up with having one angry old man in a neighborhood wanting you to stay off their lawn, basically. Because being kids, we don't care about, say
boundaries.
Boundaries. But what if the angry old man and those kids were the German Air Force and the United States Air Force were the kids? So this man by the name Helmut Winters in Bavaria, his neighborhood kids were the German and United States Air Force. Helmut G. Winter worked from home as a commercial artist in Munich, Germany, in West Germany during the Cold War, actually. So it sounds great to be able to work work from home, right? We all wish we could do such things. Well, the problem with him is that his home was actually under the flight path of the Air Force Base that was occupied by U.S. and the United States Air Force.
Oh, that would suck.
Oh, I'm sure. So
I lived right next to an Air Force base, and most of the time they would tone it down. Like we lived on the back side of an Air Force base, but mostly they wouldn't run flights. You know, it was an F-16 Air Force base. They
Right.
wouldn't run flights at night, but occasionally they would do like these like post-wide drills and everything where you got the an actual, like if the base was attacked scenario, alarms going, you know, like sirens going off, F-16s taking off and landing at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. I know, I can feel this guy's pain.
Right. So the thing is, he was a graphic artist, and he was doing the finishing touches of one of his current pieces that he was doing for one of his clients because of how low these planes were flying. They were actually rattling his personal belongings, and it caused an inkwell to fall over on a piece that he was finishing up, and that was basically his last straw. These planes were flying as low as 450 feet above his house, and sometimes helicopters under 150 feet. He would also claim that they were flying so low that he could actually see the faces of these pilots.
Oh, wow.
Helmut Winters actually did try to do a formal approach first to both militaries and send letters of complaints about the planes and other aircraft flying too low, but he got no responses. So he started to take matters into his own hands at this point. So on February 4th, this is when he actually was finishing those finishing touches on and hit his drawing, and that's what was his last straw because it was of a F-104 starfighter that would break the sound barrier over his home, basically flying overhead. And this has caused that inkwell to fall over, destroy and ruin the piece, basically. So he put in a local newspaper classified ad, anti-aircraft gun sufficient amount of ammunition wanted to restore peace and order in the airspace over Munich. He actually did end up getting quite a bit of attention, even though he had placed this ad in an emotional state of rage at this point. But British Broadcasting Company, the American press, and even the Secret Service did catch wind of this, even though he's put this in a fit of rage. The Secret Service took this very seriously, so they staked out his house, and he actually did get some responses back from his ad. One of them was a complete quad-barrel Berling's flak anti-aircraft gun with 5,000 rounds of with ammunition, a 15-centimeter flat gun from another section of town, and with a request as to cleanse the eastern sector of Munich skies from the Amis, which was German slang for the Americans. Huh. And he also did get another response with surface-to-air missiles that was in private hands. Even with the interviews that he was getting with BBC and the American press, they were wanting to know everything they could find out about the imminent shooting down of these fighter jets that he was planning on doing. And the Secret Service, being men in trench coats, showed up and hung around his house, observing what he was doing, if anything was out of place for the most part, because, you know, he's making threats towards the United States government. So this is some serious business. So that's why they're staking out his house now, too.
You know, indirectly, I'm kind of getting Killdozer vibes.
Well, not exactly at that point.
I mean, but still, like loosely.
Right. Even though Helmut Winters was actually a veteran of World War II, because he was part of the artillery corps for Russian forces during World War II, so he does have the experience for using some of this equipment. But he didn't want to actually shoot to hurt anybody, but he wanted to shoot to get attention. And with all this attention he was getting from the press, the Secret Service, he knew he had to do something. So he ended up enlisting a local cabinet maker and his wife Elizabeth to make a crossbow and potato dumplings. So for approximately 10 days, Helmut Winters would actually lob potato dumplings at low-flying aircraft over his house. Even though it only had a range of about 200 feet, it was still enough to get the attention of pilots and make them veer off course.
But did he hit one?
Well, allegedly, he never hit anything, but we're going to hold off on that when we get to that part.
Okay.
So, there is actually video on the internet of him demonstrating how this catapult worked with his wiener dog running around the yard picking up potato dumpling in its mouth. If I still have the links saved, I'll have to send it to you before you can see it. So in the 10 days he was shooting these potato dumplings, the people of Munich and the other surrounding towns would refer to him as the Robin Hood of Munich, a lone man and a dedicated dumpling cooking wife fighting for the sanity and peace of the entire city of Munich and surrounding little towns. It was also said that people ate dumpling in his honor and his fighting spirit.
I love this story.
It's estimated that he shot up upwards to 120 potato dumplings at German and American planes over the course of 10 days. He actually would keep up this barrage until Germany and the United States did finally surrender to him, even though Germany wouldn't have an official surrendering like the United States would. They just would fly their planes at a higher altitude and call it a day, basically.
Wait, the U.S. surrender? I mean, ceremonial, obviously.
Yes, they had actual ceremonials, unconditional surrender to Helmut Winters. So, U.S. Air Base Commander Major Donald Murphy, like I said, he had a more formal unconditional surrender to Helmut Winters. He and his wife and their dog would actually go onto their dog Shotzi would actually drive onto the base with a basket of potato dumplings as a peace offering and his crossbow as well. He would actually end up meeting Major Murphy next to one of the helicopters made by Skorsky, the same company that makes Blackhawks, but I cannot remember what the model type of it was, but it was a Blackhawks. It was not in that time period. Even though he did claim that he never hit any of the aircraft, the Major actually jokingly took a dumpling out of his basket and put it inside of a dent inside of this helicopter, which it coincidentally fit perfectly in the dent inside of this helicopter.
It's cool that they got a sense of humor about it, you know?
Right.
I mean, if you're lobbing potato dumplings at aircraft or whatever, when I asked if he hit one, he'd claimed they were getting as low as 450 feet, but he also said that he could see the pilot or whatever.
Right. Well, planes were flying as low as 450 feet and helicopters were flying as low as 150 feet, and this had a range of approximately 200 feet. So it's possible, but he never claimed if he did or not, because he knew there'd probably be some serious problems if he did.
I wish I had thought of that when I was living next to that Air Force base.
Yeah. So in the documentation of his unconditional surrender stating that the United States Air Force would henceforth fly no lower than 1,500 feet over Munich and its surrounding suburbs. And with his pleasing of the wind, he would actually donate his crossbow to the United States Air Force.
Where is it? Where can we go see it? What
I tried to find out where it is. I'd have to look back into my notes again. I cannot remember, but I don't think it's no longer on the Air Force Base. It's somewhere in Germany now at this point in a museum or a brewery, I think it was when I tried finding it.
A brewery?
Yeah.
Hold my beer. Load the potatoes.
Yeah. This story actually was on the front page of the New York Times, Newsweek, the San Francisco Chronicle with the headline of Dumpling Attack Routes Luftwaffe.
Is that what?
The German word for their Air Force, the Luftwaffe.
Oh. I love this story. I really do. This is great. and especially because I can relate to the guy because, I used to live next to Shaw Air Force Base. That's great. He actually did end up winning an award that was named after Carl Valentine, which was a comedian in Germany for using humor to solve a public policy problem. And then he also go on to create the dumpling order, which I thought, I was you talking to me for a second there. No, but my daughter, every time I'm doing a podcast, she decides to to photobomb it.
Oh, okay.
And she forgot to turn off the light in the bathroom. Turn off the light in the bathroom. You're overexposing. It doesn't matter. This video is not going up. But anyway. Anyway.
He would end up going on to create the dumpling order, which he would pass out smaller versions of his crossbow to recipients. Some of the people that actually did receive these were school children that built their own catapults or crossbows of the same sort of his, because what he built was actually between a ballista and a crossbow is what it looked like. And some mural artist has also received what his award for, but the only articles I could find on it were in German, so they were not translatable to find out what the dumpling order was actually about. There's even a pop song that was written in the times of it, which I've actually found it on a 45, but it's like $35 plus shipping from Germany to get it. So,
the hell with that.
And it's not even available on YouTube anywhere, unfortunately. Because I've tried, there's a small clip of it, I think, available on Discogs. But one of the lyrics of that song is, I'm the dumpling shooter from Bavaria, because I'm a friend of peace and quiet.
I bet it was available on Kaza.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Same.
Yeah.
It's like core memory unlocked, but I don't even remember exactly what Kaza was, but I just remember the name.
It was just like LimeWire.
Oh,
LimeWire, Napster.
No, I'm sure it probably was on there.
Yeah, everything was on there.
Yep.
I love that story. That's awesome, and I'd never heard of it. I mean, can you imagine this guy? Yeah, he's sitting at a bar having a beer or whatever. Let's say he's in a new city where nobody knows him.
Oh, speaking of beer and sitting on bars and drinking a beer, you ever heard of Rocket Mail?
No.
Okay, so in Texas, let me find my story here. So it came across this one picture at one point. It was like a cruise missile from the 1950s. And it was painted up like a U.S. Postal Service truck. And I was like, what the hell is this? So there's been a couple times throughout history that the United States has actually tried to use rockets to send mail. Hold on. I gotta look at her feed. I gotta search Rocket Mail off Spotify so I know what episode number it is.
And this is David's specialty. Like, he finds the most obscure stuff to write about.
Yes, you need to. Sabaton needs to put you on their writing, on their writers team. I'm not kidding, man.
I will take that as a huge compliment.
That is a huge compliment.
So, because Sarah will judge about how bonkers my episode is going to be this week by how much giggling and laughing is going on at my desk, and I'm just like, oh my god, what the fuck is this going on here, kind of thing.
Pretty much.
And she's like, what? And I'm like, I can't tell you. Because one of the things she did send me, I was like, it was constant, and that was the world's first professional farter. And she's like, what? And I'm like, I can't tell you, or I'm going to ruin it.
But
36.
like I was saying though, you can this guy he walks into a bar and he starts drinking with people and whatnot, and it's like, yeah, the U.S. Air Force surrendered to me.
Right.
Like, shut up. You have another beer. No.
It's like, yeah, you're just drunk. Shut up.
I got the surrender paperwork right here.
Right.
Opens up a
that's
briefcase.
why I couldn't find it, because I accidentally left that as 1970s gas shortage Pinto. Gonna change that right now in case I ever need it again. All right.
God,
so you want me to tell it?
I love
so
that.
Do you
story.
want me to tell you another one, or do we want to wait?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean,
right.
if it's as good as this one, I'm in.
All right. So yeah, this is like what you'll hear mostly from me on Macabre Emporium is just goofy, bonkers things of history that I find, because there'll be times I'm like not sure what to do for the week, and then the clouds part, the angels sing, and then there's this episode, just like the potato dumpling, where that's actually what happened, because sometimes we try to keep things into the same time period.
Yeah.
Where does my script for this one go? It disappeared.
I've started saving all of my scripts for just this reason, in case I wind up.
Yeah, well, I have them saved, but apparently that was when I started to do the Ford when Ford Motor Company got put on trial for for murder here in the state of Indiana. That's another one I need to fix. But that I can wait. I can't. What happened in my script list here?
Did we make a folder for it?
Yeah, I'm in the Google Documents, and I don't know if searching rocket's going to help.
Try searching missile.
Oh, because it's not titled. That's why I couldn't find it. I forgot to put it on there, so I'm going to fix that right now. Rocket mail actual. Okay. All right. So since you did mention a bar and reminded me of this story, oh, I had to go back to that one was too far on this one. Nope. Okay, let's pass that part. I'm gotta skip past it because there's 3 attempts in the United States history that has actually been mail attempts have actually been made, and one of these rockets is still on display in state of New Jersey. But on July 2nd, 1936, the patrons of the U.S. bar in Hidalgo, Mexico, would have quite the sudden shock while nursing their shots of tequila and their beers when a rocket comes flying into the bar. This was only one of the 5 rockets launched by a 16-year-old of Texas known as Keith Rumble. So Keith Rumble and his father came up with this idea when American Legion Post 37 in McAllen, Texas, that was trying to raise money to construct their own union hall, basically, that they came up with the idea of rocket stamps after hearing about the first attempt earlier that same year in New Jersey. That's a whole other story, but this one specifically came to mind because of what happened. So they would end up selling their rocket stamps for 50 cents and we call it the first international rocket mail, because their plan was to send 5 rockets into Mexico over the Rio Grande River and then have people on the Mexican side of the river send them back over to make it officially international mail once it's terminated back in the United States. So he would make 5 rockets, and these aren't like the little hobby rockets that you can pick up at your hobby store or at Hobby Lobby. These rockets were about 7 inches in length and 12 inches in diameter. So these are some pretty good sized rockets.
Yeah.
So, and also this could be the only time in the entire world history where 2 countries fired rockets at each other just for the fun of it. For the most part. So the first rocket ended up exploding over the Rio Grande River about 100 yards away from where it was launched. The second rocket would go sailing into the U.S. bar that I had just mentioned, and some bargoers would swear off drinking as a rocket landed inside after, this 12-inch diameter, 7-inch long rocket comes careening into a bar where everybody's sitting just trying to relax. And the Mexican officials actually insisted on calling this the U.S. bar tragedy after it happened. The third rocket actually would take its own trajectory and landed on a roof on the other side of the river, and just by chance, this house was only one of the few houses in the area that had shingle asphalt roofing on it instead of thatched roofing. Rocket number 4 would actually land in a cornfield and catching it on fire. And the 5th rocket, I could never find anything. I think they kind of decided there was time to stop shooting rockets after that happened. And then they would end up collecting the 2 remaining rockets that actually did make it to Mexico and shooting them back into Texas. And you can still find some of these postcards and stamps that they sold to raise money for the American Legion Post for going anywhere from $50 to $150 today online.
That's crazy. You're I had another vibe on this one. That scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail when Lancelot and his riding mate are going through the woods and everything. Meanwhile, the prince ties a letter to an arrow and fires it out the window.
Oh, yeah.
And it hits, message for you, sir.
Right. So also with that, the United States government finally got their hands in on it in 1959, but this was more of a show of force, so fuck around to find out to Russia at this time because of them setting up in Cuba, basically. To show like, hey, this is our capabilities with our rocketry. You really want to mess with us? Because they used the guise of saying that we need to find a faster, better way to send mail. So they loaded up 1,500 or so. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. Oh, excuse me. It was 3,000 letters they created to go to President Eisenhower at the time, Vice President Nixon, congressmen, state governors, and all postmaster generals in the Postal Union. Just as a souvenir of this, technological feat that they did, even though it was a show of force of fuck around and find out if you really want to. With the cruise missile capabilities, they launched it off the deck of a submarine and back onto Florida where it landed itself.
Damn. I did not know about that. I love the Florida tie-in, though.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're curious to see what this rock is, more about this type of cruise missile, was a Regulus 1 cruise missile that they used.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a link for it? I mean, I can put, I mean, the link that you were talking about in the first story with the picture of the potato gun and the,
I'll send you those later.
Yeah, I can put those into the episode.
Okay.
In the episode notes or whatever, because I want to see it. I mean, I want to see the potato gun, and I want to see this rocket.
Right.
And I know our listeners will too. So.
All right. So I have two more I can tell you, unless you want to go ahead and tell one now, so I can quit rambling on, and your listeners can hear one of your stories at this point.
All right. Give me a second. I'll find one real quick. If I can find my mouse. Where's my mouse? Okay, there it is. Not the mouse itself, but the pointer. I have 3 screens.
See? He's got more than one screen.
Actually, I have 5, but 2 of them are hooked up to a different computer.
That's overkill.
Not really, because they serve 2 separate purposes.
This doesn't help my case in David wanting to get a second monitor.
It's mostly for Twitch streaming, so I can control things easier than off of a tablet.
Let's see here. What do we got here? I'll edit this gap out. That's no big deal.
I figured that would be the case.
Yeah.
Usually we just stop, so it saves me the trouble from having to scroll.
Well, even with even when I, have to return some of the beer,
right?
You know what I mean? I'll just leave it running. It's easy. It's easier. It's just easier that way, especially when you're dealing with multiple people.
Right. My kitty, the cranky old cat that sometimes makes more appearances in an episode than the other. She's over here tapping at me, wanting attention or more food, one of the two, because she literally has no teeth left, so we gotta give her wet food at this point. But we can't leave it out if we're not in the same room, because the 2 boys will eat it instead. Which is funny, because one, he's bougie as hell, and he won't eat any steak, chicken, beef, or anything we throw at him. It has to be salmon. It'll be the only thing he'll eat if we throw it to him. I mean, Sarah does have a very short true crime case that she could throw in there, the Valparaiso chicken fucker.
I'll go right ahead. I mean, right now, right now, do y'all ever listen to the podcast That's So Fucked Up?
No, I never heard of it.
It's really good. How about you, David?
No, I haven't heard of that one. Might have to look into. And I don't need to look into anymore. I already have a huge list of stuff. Maybe one of those filler. Maybe look into it as a filler when I'm caught up on everything else. Or I'm just nah, I don't want to listen to that today.
Well, it's kind of what's happening with this one is kind of reminding me of her podcast, because she went through several co-hosts that just, I mean, it wasn't that they didn't work out. It's just that stuff happened. So there was a handful of episodes where she would have guests on, and she was just sitting there in the background doing random commentary while the guests were just basically running the show. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. Actually, that's exactly what I'm doing here. So
yeah.
How do I?
It would be a clearance. I think it's clearance bin volume 1. I don't know how you have your things labeled.
No, I don't. How do I even get into it?
Into what?
Where my scripts and stuff
Do
are.
you not have documents installed on your phone?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a separate app you have to install on your phone from Play Store.
I'm going through the rest of this list that I had. The horror story of the Brooklyn vampire who tortured, killed, and ate children. It's like without even scrolling down, and I'm thinking, showbiz.
Right.
That's exactly who it was.
Yeah, when we met with Jerry Pauly of Hillbilly Horror Stories, he brought up Albert Fish, and I'm just like, don't say it.
Well, technically, that's not ripping anybody off because he did say that.
Right, but the way that you and I know it, I wasn't trying to bring other podcast stuff into it when this was about Sarah and I and our show at the time.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of times, like on one of the Peter Curtin episodes, me and Matthew did showbiz, and I just like, okay, yeah, shout out to Time Suck because you have to,
right.
Although when Time Suck covered Larry Hall and James Keane, we did that one over a year ago, and it's just like I was wondering what he was going to do for the voice because I did the voice that was on the Apple TV series, and the voice I think he was initially going to do that, but then either he heard my episode or somebody told him about it, and it's just like, nah, somebody else has done that. So that's what he came up with, the historical reenactment thing that he did, which was great.
Wasn't Larry Hall the weepy voice killer or whatever that would like make confessions while crying or something like that? Or am I thinking of somebody else? No,
but they sound alike. Like to the point to where I am serious. I'm not going to have time to get it done this year, but I would seriously consider for next year, and we'll cover the weepy voice killer at some point.
Okay.
But I'm going to do like because you know damn well I'm going to do the weepy voice killer's voice when I cover that one.
Right.
But I'm going to do like for Christmas next year, I'm going to do a version of Baby It's Cold Outside with the weepy voice killer and Larry Hall.
Oh God.
Oh jeez. Yeah, I'm looking at doing the Christmas truce this year for Christmas. What?
I hadn't thought about that, but so I won't do it.
It's a possibility of me doing that, but I don't know if I'm 100% committed to doing it yet or not.
I don't know if there's enough material for that though. Like, unless you're going to do like a potpourri episode like this.
We have those. They're called clearance bin episodes, so maybe.
It's a great story though, and an amazing song.
Right. All right. I think Sarah's found her script here, unless you want to do one first before she does hers.
I'm still looking.
Okay.
Mine isn't too long.
But this comes out of Indiana as well, too, so.
Yeah. Before I start, are you good with like cussing? Because I have a hard problem with not.
Have you heard my show? Have you heard Have you heard my fucking show? God damn it!
All right, I'm gonna take that as you're good to go.
Yeah, she doesn't get as much time to listen to podcasts as I do with her line of work.
Unfortunately,
it's all good.
She tries to listen to stuff, but it'll take her like the entire day to listen to maybe about 20 minutes of it, basically.
Pretty much,
if she's lucky.
Every single one of my episodes has an E on it.
Yeah, we do the same thing too, just for explicit content.
Oh, yeah.
I basically just do it because, we're talking true crime and violence here, basically.
Oh, there's cussing in every single one of my episodes.
Right. I'm sure there is too when we're not even thinking about it because we just sit here as we're having our own conversation, basically.
Pretty much.
Now you got Christmas truce stuck in my head.
Is that another Sabaton thing?
It is.
No.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Not on a recent Sabaton album I just bought.
You just bought one?
Yeah.
Oh, duh. Sorry, yeah, I was there.
It just happened to be the one on the one album there that I actually heard majority of the songs on. I gotta stretch my legs out because of this chair's fucking making me sit up straight, and I can't adjust it. Fucking sucks compared to the one that I had. Kind of, almost, but it's still better than what I had.
But as far as songs to be stuck in
but
your
it was
head,
free, so I can't complain.
As far as songs to be stuck in your head, I can think of much worse songs than Christmas Truce. So,
we all could.
Yeah. Actually, having Christmas Truce stuck in your head is definitely not a bad thing.
Right.
But anyway.
All right. You ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, God, that is really echoey.
Now you hear it finally?
Yeah, I do.
Is it me or is it you?
No, I think it's our room, because we got Audio-Technica boom arm, broadcaster mic arms not too long ago to just free up space on our table. And we've had this weird echo all of it since we've gotten it.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't hear it. I don't hear it. And I'm like, it's there. And now she finally hears it after almost a month of having them now.
Yeah.
I don't hear it.
I hear it. It was really bad. I moved the mic up though, so maybe that'll help.
Here, let's try something. Close the door partially so the cats can still come in and out. That might be it, because it's going out in the hallway and bouncing around in there. Maybe.
Did I show you the picture of my boom arm mount?
Yeah. Yeah, you sent me the Amazon link to it. I was like, wow. Because I had just never seen it before.
Because the light's in it?
Yeah.
No, I mean when I have it mounted on because the
yeah. You sent me the vice that you have it attached to right now.
Yeah, I kept breaking them because they're so flimsy and everything, and because I'm constantly moving mine around and everything. It doesn't just sit there, and they break. So I bought a freaking vice and mounted it to my desk.
Well, I mean, if it's working, it's working.
Oh, it's working. I was telling David, I said, if I ever break the vice, I'm just going to quit podcasting.
And the only way that's going to break is if there's an air pocket that formed in the middle of it during casting, but I doubt that would happen.
An air pocket?
Yeah.
Well, it's because it's made out of iron.
Oh. All right. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. So let me start off with asking if you know who Trent Reznor is.
Yes.
Okay. So there's this man named Michael Bassagano from Hobart, Indiana. And we'll say, just to give you a visual of what he looks like, and you can...
There's a town in Indiana called Hobart?
Yeah.
Yep.
That is crazy, because because the cult leader that I was under, his name was Hobart. And
I don't know
and the headquarters were in Indiana.
Right. Which I think I had told that to Sarah about the last time we went out to Fort Wayne, that it's kind of in our area around Syracuse, because there's a record store down in that general direction we go to every once in a while.
Yep. But yeah, so just kind of imagine Trent Reznor if he really knew his way around a banjo. If you catch my drift. No.
Take.
Not like that.
About.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. She got me their Banjo Academy t-shirt 1 year.
Oh, Christmas.
I understand that fully. But yeah, you'll have to Google this dude after I'm done telling you about him, so you can see what I mean with that reference.
Okay.
Anyways, Michael was first arrested in 1991 when he was found inside of a chicken coop with dead chickens at his feet. His second arrest came from breaking a rooster's neck before he found out his neighbors. What? No. Sorry. His second arrest came from breaking a rooster's neck before being found in his neighbor's goose pen attempting to rape the geese. He was taken to court and pled guilty.
I have questions.
You'll have a lot more by the end of this.
Well, okay, then we'll just do them as they come, because I don't have a notebook near me, so I can't write them down.
Fire away.
Okay. One thing that I have never understood about stories like that, about somebody taking liberties with a chicken or a goose, I'm imagining that the area would be like much smaller than normal, so that must say something about the perpetrator.
Well, they also have to lay eggs too, So they do expand.
You ruined my joke. Damn it.
No, I get what you're saying. He probably was a little dick
You guys are talking. You got that micropene episode. I was trying to expand on that, and you just validated.
Right. Well, micropene regime because they were fucking neo-Nazis. So
yeah.
Okay.
So he was.
I had to go there.
No, that's fine. He was taken to court and pled guilty to a misdemeanor and was charged a $500 fine. This was not his first time. He had a long history of sexually abusing animals and killing them, mainly dogs, chickens, and guinea fowl.
And what?
Guinea fowl?
Oh, okay. I know what they are.
Yeah. He said himself that he would sleep with dead animals and even slept with a dead raccoon as a child. In 1993, he was found guilty of breaking into a barn.
Oh, hold on. Are we talking cuddling or the other
no,
meaning of that?
Sleeping with. Yeah. That was his partner.
Or as a child.
As a child. Yeah. This dude's a huge creep. Like, it gets worse.
Oh, wow.
In 1993, he was found guilty of breaking into a barn, stealing a Rottweiler, and then killing it by breaking its neck. Which, I don't know, it just seems kind of like Rottweilers are huge dogs.
Right.
You would think that wouldn't be the easiest thing. And they're not known as being like the nicest animals either.
Now, I mean, they can be sweet. They can be sweet and cuddly and all that stuff. But if you are, he had to have drugged the Rottie.
That's
because
possible.
if you come up on a Rottweiler like that, first of all, their hearing is much better than ours. They're going to hear you coming, so they're going to turn around. So you're not going to sneak up on a Rottweiler.
Yeah.
So he had to have drugged that dog, because otherwise, if you come up on a Rottweiler, it's going to turn around, so it's going to be facing you. So if you put your hands around the neck and put any type of pressure, that dog's going to fuck you up.
Oh yeah.
So he had to have drugged it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a high possibility.
And that makes it even worse. That's even more premeditation.
Yes. So during that trial for that, Michael basically said that he'd rather live with animals than people. But
I'm sure the animals would rather have him live with people.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, how much do you really want to live with them if you keep fucking them and killing them? You know?
Well, how many sexual serial killers are there?
Right. I mean, because Jeffrey Dahmer was trying to, create a sex slave zombie, basically, is what he was attempting to do.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said the world would be a much better place without people.
True that. So a month later, he was released and then arrested again in connection to an attempted theft of a German Shepherd.
Once
in
again,
2000,
had to have drugged it.
Probably. In 2002, Michael Bassagano served 4 years in prison because he took a chicken on a date to a no-tell motel, had sex with it, and then killed it. There was far more than one chicken prior to that, but I guess they weren't special enough for an evening out at a motel.
You just made me spit out my beer.
You're welcome.
That's only the second time that has happened on this.
I make my best friend do that almost on a daily basis.
Oh my God, it got all over my phone too. Oh my God. And my keyboard.
Do you need a second to clean all that up?
No, you can continue, but it's only, and I've been at this for over a year and a half now, and that's only the second time that's happened. I've come close a bunch of times, but that's only the second time that it's happened.
That's awesome. So when he was in jail for this, he slept underneath his cot, and he painted cat stripes on his body and drew pictures of himself and referred to himself as the master of cats.
So, like a Cincinnati Bengals uniform.
Probably.
Sure. In 2009, he was arrested for downloading bestiality porn on his computer and was sentenced to 33 months in federal prison. After he served that time, he got out with 3 years of federal supervised release, but he fucked that up in 2013 when he was arrested for sexually abusing the guinea fowl. With this, he pled guilty to the theft of the bird. For one, he stole it, and was then sentenced to 7.5 years for being a habitual offender. 2017, Michael begged the federal judge to release him from prison so he could undergo chemical castration. His attorney requested that the courts take into consideration the time Michael had already served in prison, and that he would undergo therapy and monthly injections of a testosterone-reducing drug called Depo-Lupron.
How old was he?
Oh, I think he was in his 30s at this time.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. No reason.
Yeah, his attorney also argued that Michael is motivated by sexual desire, not by sadism or any desire to hurt animals. But he killed him. So that was a pretty weak argument on her part. He was evaluated by a man named Fred Berlin, who was an associate professor at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. Fred said that the hormone treatment could be effective. So in a court filing, Michael's attorney said, to the extent of Michael Besagano has accidentally killed or injured animals during the course of his sexual exploits, that harm is no greater than that imposed by meat eaters and leather wearers nationwide.
There's a difference.
There's a huge difference.
There's a difference. We are.
Yeah, that was pretty much David's reply to that one. I told him the story the first time. Just no words, right?
I don't even have to elaborate. The joke writes itself. It's just there. I don't even need to elaborate.
Yep. So his attorney went on to say, Mr. Besagano's history is unique. His entire history is within both the federal and state prison systems is entirely animated by his sexual preferences. Those preferences are almost certainly the result of Mr. Besagano's remarkably traumatic childhood. Unable to receive or seek affection from his parents, he sought that affection from animals. So to kind of end this off, his attorney also wrote, Mr. Besagano poses no risk of harm whatsoever to the human members of his community. Just the animals. That is probably the only thing she said that was accurate. However, that leaves the untargeted humans in his community to have to pull double duty on the farm, making sure this idiot wasn't wandering around trying to poke one of their animals' buttholes. And there is a song by a punk band from Valparaiso, Indiana, and they're called Violated, and they actually made a song in 2005, and it is literally called Chicken Fucker Motel, and it's about this guy.
Oh, man.
Indiana's wild.
Yeah. A little bit.
Indiana and California are cult central in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
There was somebody that we covered recently, and I can't remember who the hell. I'm scrolling through my feed right now, trying to remember. But there was somebody that we covered recently that was just all into animals too, but I can't find it. Oh, well, it must have been further back than I thought that it was. But, yeah, Pee Wee Gaskins.
Good Lord.
Yeah,
he was the first ever case of it, like anybody's ever covered that. I was like, okay, I have to skip this fucking part. Because I first heard his name on Necronomicon when they covered him and they started reading his confessional letter about the baby. And I was like, they started in on it, and I just listened, and then he's more than read into it. I was like, nope.
Necronomipod read the entire fucking thing.
Yeah, I was
and
like,
I'm like, because we covered Pee Wee. True Crime Kent covered Pee Wee, And True Crime Kent did a 3 or 4 part episode on Pee Wee Gaskins, and when I met them at CrimeCon, he said, Kent said that he was planning on, well, at first he had said on the podcast that, because that was his current episode they had at the time, he said that he wasn't gonna, that he wasn't gonna read the letter. And then I told him that Necronomicon read the whole thing, and he's just like, well, now I have to, but, but he didn't do it. He didn't. In fact, we covered more of the letter than True Crime Kent did. So, right. And we didn't really go that far into it. Yeah, but yeah, and yeah, that was a rough one. But
yeah, that was like one of the very few times I've ever had to be like, nope, I'm not listening to this part.
Yeah, I mean that's happened. I think that happens to everybody, but yeah. Necronomicon read the whole fucking thing, and it's just like, I think an unintended consequence of that would be you'd have fucking pedophiles sitting there jerking off to it.
Yeah, it's one of those things you're better off not thinking about.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't go into graphic detail, but I told, it took, I had one or two paragraphs on it. Whereas Necronomicon would have been like 1 or 2 pages.
Yeah.
and like I said, True Crime Kent did even less than I did. So
yeah.
And I thought that I was being, showing I thought that I was cutting an awful lot out of it, but so
yeah. So we probably should, before we take over your entire Patreon episode here, we probably should let you read one of yours that you got listed.
Yeah, I got one. It's from that article that we decided not to use.
Okay.
Because because there's too many things on it that like other podcasts have covered,
right,
to death. So
right. So maybe it was a good thing for you that you decided to message me about having us on.
Yeah. Well, I'm not Dan Cummins. I can't do it myself. I have to have people to bounce things off of. But he's a stand-up comedian, so of course
he's used to doing it.
So yeah. But the story that I took, and I haven't read the story. I never read the story when I do these things. I just look over the titles and everything, and it's like, oh, that sounds cool. But I was like getting ready to leave a distribution center when I sent you the article. It's like, okay, I've been sitting on this one and I hadn't looked at it yet. So, but one story that was in that, I definitely, it piqued my interest, and that was how Alexander the Great was buried alive.
I don't know how it's a possibility, but they also don't know where his grave is either. So,
right. So,
but I am intrigued to hear this story.
Yeah, me too. I was just like, okay, that's a good one. But most of the rest of them are stuff that other podcasts have done, like a lot, like Albert Fish. So this is from allthat'sinteresting.com, 11 true horror stories from real life that are scarier than anything that Hollywood could come up with. That's not the exact title, but close enough. So let's see. How Alexander the Great was buried alive. When Alexander the Great's body failed to decompose 6 days after his death, the ancient Greeks were in awe. His loyal followers believed that this was clear confirmation that he was in fact a god, but modern scientists have since declared otherwise. In fact, according to one theory, the ancient king's body didn't decompose because he wasn't actually dead.
Okay.
Alexander the Great may have been the most famous person in history to be buried alive. So, according to Plutarch, an ancient Greek historian who wrote his parallel lives hundreds of years after Alexander's reign, using many secondary sources like Wikipedia. I'm kidding. But the Macedonian conqueror, he died in 323 BC. And after a 24-hour drinking spree, he came down with a fever and felt a sudden pain in his back as though smitten with a spear. And pretty soon he was paralyzed, and soon after he was rendered speechless. So eventually the 32-year-old Alexander the Great was pronounced dead. I think Timesuck did an early episode on Alexander, didn't he?
He might have. I don't remember.
I think he did. But and then he did the Alexander the Great library, but I haven't listened to that one yet. I probably will, but the cause of death has been a mystery for millennia, but one doctor recently thought that she cracked it. February of 2019, Catherine Hall at the University of Otago in New Zealand posted in the Ancient History Bulletin that Alexander suffered from Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS. And it's a rare autoimmune disorder that can lead to fever, abdominal pain, and paralysis, which to Hall seems to exactly fit Plutarch's account of Alexander's death.
All right.
Yeah, Timesuck did do one. It was either Timesuck or Last Podcast on the Left, one or the other. Or maybe both.
Well,
who knows?
I'm pretty sure he's done one on the Library of Alexandria and also Alexander the Great. I believe he's done both, actually.
Yeah, he's the Library of Alexandria was recent, but I think Alexander the Great himself was a very early one for him.
Yeah, probably back when he was recording his kitchen table. I don't remember.
Probably
almost 400 episodes. I'm not gonna remember every single one.
Yeah, I'm sitting here be releasing number 87 on Sunday. Yay.
Right.
So the combination of ascending paralysis with normal mental ability is very rare, and I have only seen it with GPS. GBS. She suggested that Alexander contracted the rare disorder from I am not even going to try to pronounce that, infection.
We've had our moments like that too. Or like if you ever listen to the Onwick Poison Garden episode, I think it was that episode, there was one word I couldn't get, and so I just had Sarah say it for me instead.
Yeah.
Well, I stumble over just everyday words. And I'm probably jinxing myself because I haven't done it yet, but I'm knock on wood. But I mean, one time I like totally garbled, and just got tongue tied when I was trying to say, self-confidence.
And I've done that too, trying to say the word physician on another episode, which
but on self-confidence though?
Right.
It's like, what the fuck?
I think that was also the Poison Garden episode too.
It was on a recent episode of ours where I just so, but I will try to pronounce this rare disorder, Campylobacter pylori. Campylobacter pylori infection.
Sure.
We're just going to go with that.
Yeah. I pronounced it as it was written, but I'm sure that the pronunciation was wrong.
As I can see on Sarah's face, that she was trying to figure it out because she has to do that for me quite a bit, and she's pretty good at it. And I think like she couldn't even figure that one out.
Campylobacterpylori.
Nope, she still doesn't get it.
Yeah, no clue.
Oh, by the way, this is the first time that I've ever had the entire podcast on with me. That's cool. Like with a guest, it's like usually when I have podcasts, most podcasts are at least two people, but
right.
Usually I'll just get one This is the first time I've had both members, so awesome.
Well, we are a package deal.
Yeah, it's always been anybody that ever asks us to come on. I ask her if she's even has interest in coming on. She's always said yes, and then I always bring that up. And if they would ever tell me no, then I'm like, it's either she comes on with me or I'm not coming on. Because Macabre Emporium is the two of us together. It's not just me.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it, and I'd be the same way too. But it's just for whatever reason, whenever I would get people on or whatever, it would just be like one half of a podcast or whatever. But
right,
it is what it is. I mean, sometimes people, they get busy and stuff like that or whatever, and it's hard enough to coordinate two people just to do one episode, let alone come on an extra episode for then 3 or maybe even 4 people. So
yeah, we've been trying to schedule doing something similar to this with 2 guys that helped us out a lot in the beginning. That they brought up about doing an episode together. We started talking about it, and then we just kind of put it on the back burner. We really need to talk to them again about that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, back to the story, or as I like to say, hashtag, but I digress. So back in the 4th century BC, doctors couldn't use a patient's pulse to diagnose death. They used breath. And since Alexander was paralyzed, his body required less oxygen, and his breathing was kept to a minimum, and I see where this is going. Thus, his pupils dilated and lack of response to stimuli. Doctors assumed that he was dead when his mental faculties were completely intact. Paul thinks that Alexander was pronounced dead a full 6 days before he actually died, which that explains why Plutarch described his body as remaining pure and fresh for 2 days, and it would also mean that Alexander was buried alive.
Ugh.
This actually reminds me of my episode that I did about premature burial and death preventions for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. It felt a little deja vu-esque.
Yeah, a lady by the name of Marjorie McCall was actually pronounced dead in Ireland because of something similar, because she was ill, and then her heart rate was so slow they pronounced her dead basically as well. And then she was like buried alive. Grave robbers went to cut her finger off to take the gold ring off of her finger, and she shot up out of the grave, basically screaming in pain.
How much longer did she live?
She lived on to. Actually, I'm just brought it up because I can't remember her name. And since till death was part, her vows were null and void at that point. So she ended up remarrying and having several more children after that. And her headstone actually reads, "Lived once, buried twice." Actually.
Oh. Well, it's good that she moved on, and it's good that the grave robber didn't just finish the job.
Yeah.
So, but some scholars dispute Hall's explanation. For one, her source material was written more than 400 years after the death in question, and it's nearly impossible to properly diagnose somebody without examining their remains. And as you guys were saying before, Alexander's burial site has never been found. But even still, Hall's is a freaky theory and a real-life horror story for the ages. And she said, I wanted to stimulate new debate and discussion and possibly rewrite the history books by arguing Alexander's real death was 6 days later than previously accepted.
Right.
The enduring mystery of his death continues to attract both public and scholastic interest. The elegance of not GPS, but GBS diagnosis for the cause of his death is that it explains so many otherwise diverse elements and renders them into a coherent whole. WHOLE.
Right.
It's a tidy diagnosis, but it means that Alexander the Great, the bright military mind who conquered half the planet, may have very well witnessed his own funeral.
Huh. That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
If that was me.
Yep.
No,
yeah,
thank you.
that is scary. I mean, being buried alive. I don't know.
And
you guys ever watch the show The Orville by Seth MacFarlane?
we watched
We
like
did,
the
yeah.
first or two seasons, and
We
then
watched all of it.
I thought it went on to Hulu at one point, or was
Yeah.
going to, and I don't think it ever did. Is
Yeah,
it back on?
No, it got canceled,
Oh, okay.
which sucks because it was really good.
Yeah.
We liked it too.
And Sarah's not really into sci-fi, but she really liked watching that with me.
Yeah, because it was stupid.
Yeah.
But the first season was stupid, but the second and third seasons, they like really became a legit sci-fi show.
Yeah.
with funny stuff thrown in. But and one of them, his first officer, which is his ex-wife, asks, well, I don't want to live forever. And the captain, which is Seth MacFarlane, he says, well, I do. She's like, why? He's like, I want to see what happens.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? That's exactly how I feel. It's like, I want to see us get like interstellar travel, I want to see all that happen, but I'm not going to.
Right. Is it going to happen eventually, but not in this lifetime?
But I want to
there.
see it. I want to see it.
Right. But in my premature and death prevention episode, they're actually in Germany, they would actually build special boxes over top of open graves to watch for any signs of life, like fogging of the glass in the box, and watch for decomposition. And when the body was far enough decomposition along the way, they would actually just slide out the bottom and drop it into the grave. And then one man in Vermont, he actually had a special tomb built, which you can visit today. He actually had as a 14 by 14 inch glass window over top of his coffin, so people can look down in to see if he's still alive or not. And before the window fogged up over time, you can actually see a hammer and chisel laying next to his coffin. And he had a set of stairs built into it that he can walk up, push a capstone off, and escape if he was actually buried alive.
Yeah, they also did, a lot, like during the medieval times or whatever, when, they would like put a string in the coffin and run it up to the top, and they would mount a bell next to the tombstone.
Yeah, I covered some patents in that episode too about some things, improvements of that as well too. But some of the things they did in the Victorian period also were a little bit batshit crazy about how they made sure somebody was really dead.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, like making incisions in one or more arteries, basically, to make sure that no blood flowed, or actually making sure by like euthanizing a dead body, basically.
Making sure they weren't mostly dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You've been mostly dead all day.
Yeah. Mostly dead is still mostly alive.
Great. Mostly Dead is still a little bit alive. Yeah. Great movie. Princess Bride. So, you got any more?
Oh, I've got all sorts of goofy shit. Do you want a feel-good story, or do you want something sports-related?
What kind of sports?
An event similar to 10-cent beer night for the Cleveland Indians, but
okay. I mean,
known as Disco Demolition, but I do have a feel-good story, basically, and kind of a war story. But hold on, just a minute.
I'm gonna find
Sarah's,
I'm gonna find another one too, just in case we feel like going.
Right.
I'm having fun. I don't know about you guys.
All right. Well, we got about an hour left before we got to head to bed anyhow. So
yeah,
okay.
But I'm gonna hop off for the moment and leave you two be.
Okay.
But it was very nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Of course. I'm sure we'll probably do this again in the future, perhaps.
All right.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
We'll do it. We'll do a true collab that'll go out on both main feeds.
All right.
Nice. All right. Have a good night.
It was nice meeting you.
You too.
All right. So I'm going to take a couple puffs here. Actually, we'll save a sports one for another day because I've come to love the story because one of our listeners actually customized a 1979 Camaro Hot Wheels car for me, and he brought it to me this past weekend. So have you ever heard of Helge Meyer?
Maybe.
Okay, so he was also known as God's Rambo. Oops, I have my wrong list open for this. Hold on a second.
Oh boy, that sounds culty to me.
No, this isn't cult or anything like that. This is actually I guess you could say a holiday feel-good story. But I'm actually going to use my episode show intro for this as well too, because it will actually grab your attention. You're going to be like, okay, what's going on here? I need to hear this story. So for a moment, let's imagine. I'm going to start that over. So for a moment, imagine it's 1991. Terminator 2 Judgment Day is in the theaters along with Robin Hood, and you just got home from dinner at Pizza Hut for mine and Sarah's age group, because we just probably would have cashed in our latest Book It reward from reading an X amount of books and got a free personal pan pizza for doing so. and the Simpsons have taken over the airwaves on Sunday night television. Grab some water real quick here. Metallica has released their Black album. Every couple at this time has made Bryan Adams' song "I Do It For You" their song. Life is going great here in the United States, but however, in war-torn Yugoslavia, thousands of people are left without basic needs, a warm place to stay, or life-saving medicine. That
also unfortunately caused the demise of the great automobile, the Yugo.
Right. Sorry, I did not mean to do that in the mic.
No, but yeah, that was a joke. That car.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah, I know. I remember vaguely seeing a couple here. So with their desperate pleas to God and their prayers for relief, as the sound of war becomes all too familiar, but maybe, just maybe, sometimes the night was quiet enough. Instead of distant gunfire and bombings breaking the silence, the sound of a supercharged engine and tires squealing pierced the night. Even though, on the other side of things, between soldiers and bandits in the area, hearing the roar of a mechanical beast breaking the night, they would strain their eyes to see anything identifiable as the sound grows closer. Soldiers check radar for anything for blips, but the radar shows nothing. These bandits' also adrenaline would begin to surge as the sound becomes louder as it approaches at a fevered pace. And just as fast as it appears, it's gone in a flash. But there would be no flash, as this beast has no lights, except maybe the flicker from a lighter from the inside, and a rubber duck in its grill, as it races by soldiers and bandits to its destination. They didn't have a supernatural encounter. This was God's Rambo and his ghost Camaro, Helge Meyer.
What was the last word?
Helge Meyer, Meier.
Oh, okay, okay. I was coughing when you said that, so.
Oh, that's fine. So, before we even meet Helge Meyer, we have to understand what's going on in the Balkans at this time. From World War II to the 1980s, the Republic states of Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, Slovenia, and Bosnia-Herzegovina and Macedonia made up the now former Yugoslavia and were under the dictatorship of Josip Broz Tito when he died on May 4th, 1980. And after his death, this would be considered the beginning of the end of Yugoslavia. By 1991, Croatia, Slovenia, and Macedonia declared their independence from Yugoslavia. Macedonia was allowed to leave peacefully, but Croatia and Slovenia would have to fight for their independence. Serbia and Montenegro wanted to become the successors of Yugoslavia as they held the most power and military might that made up the Yugoslavian army, and these two countries didn't want to let go of their power have these independent states. When Bosnia-Herzegovina declared their independence, the population was split. One half wanted to stay part of the Yugoslavia under the control of Serbia, while the other wanted their independence, causing them to break out in a civil war in the early 1990s. At first, during the Civil War, aid was being supplied by the United Nations and other countries by trucks, but as trucks are, as you know personally, trucks are slow and easy targets for bandits and the opposing forces, basically.
Only if they stop.
True, but this is also in a war-torn country. So
yeah, true.
So the road may or may not be there in its entirety. But as more and more trucks started getting blown up or robbed, the UN would stop sending trucks. Seeing the Balkans broken out in war, Helge Meyer was left speechless by those dying in these conflicts, especially the children and the elderly, and he felt compelled to do something about it as he learned that aid was not being sent anymore. as it was team duty just because of this war zone being robbed, blown up, etc., etc. I lost my spot. So, seeing all this, he wanted to help those in need. So at first he would turn to the European nations for help, but one by one they turned him away until he made the decision to try his luck with the United States military. Helgigmeyer would travel to Rhein-Main Air Force Base in Frankfurt, Germany. Here he would meet up with the Army commander of the base, which I wasn't able to find his name for this article, this story when I did it on our own show. That he would suggest to them, instead of sending slow, heavy trucks, we need to send something light, fast, and stealthy. With the United States Army on board with this plan, he would end up using a 1979 Camaro he bought from a U.S. serviceman in 1986 and would get to work on his Ghost Camaro. So with the help of the United States Army, either the United States Army or Air Force, because sources on this did vary on who helped them on this, they would strip his Camaro down, basically removing all interior except for the front two seats, and that was left to the interior, basically. Everything else was gone. They had to strip all the excess weight out of this car. And they would basically turn it into a modern-day real-life Kit Knight Rider car.
Wait.
So they ended up putting Kevlar and steel plating to the body and the back window, the underbody as well, and got steel plating on it, Kevlar inserts in the doors. They modified the V8 engine with a blower and nitrous oxide, increasing the horsepower to 440 when using nitrous oxide. They put iron...
Hold on. Are you familiar with Knight Rider?
Well, I remember a little bit watching it.
Well, it's like, okay. It was like this organization called FLAG, which was an acronym for the Foundation for Law and Government.
Okay.
Which really makes no sense. I'm saying this because it's like so ridiculous because, you know, when you think about it, but that was what TV was in the 80s.
Right.
You know, and it's just like the Foundation for Law and Government. You got a guy with a car.
Yeah.
You know?
And were they like based out of a tractor trailer basically, and then he like right up and back in and out of it whenever he did the stuff?
That's just how it was deployed. Like if they were going to a different location or whatever, and something happened, they could deploy it or whatever. It was just easier to transport kit in a thing, and that's on the video game Knight Rider, or what the hell was the name?
Spy Hunter.
Spy Hunter, yeah. That was the inspiration for that video game.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's like you got a guy with a car.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like it's so freaking ridiculous. It's like the Foundation for Law and Government. Well, we already have law and we already have government. So why do we need a clandestine Foundation for Law and Government? I mean, I can remember watching that even as a teenager, reruns, because I wasn't allowed to watch it, you know, actually, I started watching it in my, I guess in my like late teens or whatever.
Right.
I wasn't allowed to watch it as a kid.
Right.
Because TV was a sin. But
yeah, because it's from the devil. Basically, it's a sin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but reading through the list of the things they did to his car, it reminded me of like the Knight Rider car, basically.
Well, Knight Rider Kit was a Firebird, though.
Right, but I mean, like all the gadgets that Kit had.
Right,
is when I was reading it. Even though, I mean, they're basically the same car, just different badging for the most part, and different motors, obviously. But for the most part, they're really the same car. So some of the other things that they did add, they added a mine clearing blade on the front of the car so you could push anti-vehicle mines out of his way, run flat tires. They painted the exterior car black, but not any regular everyday off-the-shelf black. They actually used the same matte black paint that they used to paint the stealth fighters and bombers with.
Oh, cool. When was this?
This was in the early 90s during the Bosnian
that's
Civil
right.
War.
The fall of Yugoslavia. The fall of Yugoslavia.
Yep, when Yugoslavia was coming apart.
Yeah, okay. It hadn't happened yet, but it just happened now. Yugoslavia. Got it.
Yeah. They even equipped this car with military-grade GPS for the times thermal body heat detection was on board, a fire suppression system, infrared headlights. He had night vision available to him in the car, high frequency ground to air radio to communicate with aircraft, and just for the fun of it, a yellow rubber ducky in the grill.
I love
So
that.
when he first started having his runs, the United States military did draw out a map for him, but to just the naked eye, it was just a regular run-of-the-mill map. But until you put it under a UV lamp, it would actually show the fastest routes for him to go in and out of Germany into Bosnia. So after they ended up stripping down his car to basically just the two front seats and everything, to do a test run with his car to see how fast it would go, they loaded up 880 pounds of supplies in the car, and it reached a top speed of 125 miles.
Wow.
And that's carrying 880 pounds worth of aid, and it was still, hitting triple digits. I can only imagine how much faster this car could have been empty. One of the interesting things about Helge Meyer was that he never carried any guns with him. The only weaponry he carried was his faith, because he was a man of God, his knowledge of the roads in the area, and a tomahawk and 2 combat knives. That's all he carried with him in the car, and other than a Quran, because the population of Bosnia was split between Muslims and Christians. So depending on his area, he would have a Quran visible if for whatever reason. I could not find why he carried it. He just said he carried it for tactical purposes. The service of Rhine Main Air Force Base actually did raise an additional $12,000 to help buy additional supplies, and I inflated it to today's amount.
He carried a Bible for tactical purposes?
Yeah, for this Quran, this Muslim Quran, he said he only carried it for tactical purposes, but never specified why, and I could not find an answer why.
I don't know. I've never read the Quran, but I'm assuming that it's probably about the same amount of pages as a Bible.
Well, Helge Meyer was Danish, so his Bible was very, very thick. Think like a Merriam-Webster dictionary that we grew up with. Mm-hmm. It was like one of those, like twice the size of it, basically. So a thick, heavy book, and he carried a Quran, so maybe it was if...
So you put the two of them in a pillowcase, and if somebody fucks with you, you can just whack them with that. And the 2 books combined is going to put somebody down.
Well, his Danish Bible alone could do that for as heavy and thick it was in the pictures that I saw of it.
Yeah, but the exclamation point is the Quran.
Right. So even the servicemen of Rhine Main Air Force Base raised $12,000 in 1990, and I inflated it to today's money. It'd be about $26,139 today in 2023 to buy additional supplies for the people of Bosnia. And it was also brought up in 1 or 2 videos also that once more word got out to corporations on what was going on, Lego actually started donating their Lego bricks to his cause, basically, to run into Bosnia to give the children. So, he's also carrying like food and water, toys for children, medicine, other medical supplies, sanitary supplies, clothing, diapers, just basic necessities to, just survive basically during, this time. But, he wasn't just a regular Danish man that wanted to help. He was actually a special forces commando for the Jaeger Corps, which is like the equivalent to Delta Force in the United States.
Damn.
He also did serve during Desert Storm, and he also did train with the U.S. Green Berets. But on his first run, since he was very religious, he made a deal with God that he said if God himself would actually make sure that him and the car would make it back in and out of Bosnia fine, he would actually paint the margins of his Bible in gold paint for every run that he made. He actually ended up painting 126 pages of his Bible for each run that he made in and out safely.
Wait, so therefore, if he's painting the pages, you can't read it anymore.
No, he didn't paint the entire thing. He just painted the blank margins around the text.
Okay, yeah. You said that, but it escaped my
just
head.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, my bad.
So when the airbase chaplain found out what he was doing and about his faith, that's where the name God's Rainbow came from.
I like it.
So for 3 years, he would actually drive in and out of Bosnia with his, with all of these runs that he was making, but he would be wearing studded fingerless gloves and a cigar hanging out of his mouth most of the time in his pictures and sunglasses. And he would go on to say, it was good to drive in these fingerless gloves and it looked dangerous. The exact effect a weaponless one-man army needed in enemy land. It was about looking wild. No one dared to lay a finger on me, and it worked for most of the part. There was actually one time that he actually did become hostage in his own car as he ran into a checkpoint because there was a $250,000 bounty on his head because 2 Serbian fighter jets were shot down in a no-fly zone, and his Camaro was spotted nearby. So now that he's being held at gunpoint in his car, he would end up knocking out his unwanted passenger knocking the unwanted passenger's gun out of his hands with his elbow, then hits him in the neck multiple times to make breathing difficult, and then punches him in the face. And with it being at night, at this time is when he would make his runs because the car is painted this special matte black that makes it basically invisible. Nobody knows what's going on because his back window is no there. It's actually a steel plate that they place in case somebody would shoot at him, that it wouldn't break out the window and he'd get hit. So the people that's behind him don't know what's going on. The people in front of him don't know what's going on because, they're in front. He ends up spinning, turning off all of his lights, flips his car into J turn, going back the opposite direction, and ends up hitting his nitrous oxide to get away from his captors, basically, other than his unwanted passenger. And later on, he ended up dropping off the man he called by Joe later on in a ditch. He doesn't think he was dead, but he figured his friends would be along soon enough to find him. Even though he did have this bounty on his head, he did end up driving with a Kevlar helmet at times, depending on where he was going through, probably Sniper Alley at the time in Kosovo, if I remember correctly. He did wear a sniper shot infrared detector on his chest so that if he was the line of sight of snipers, it would start going off while he was driving. And he ended up taking a shot once to the helmet while he was driving. He still has the helmet today with the bullet still lodged in it.
Oh, wow.
One of the things he always recalls when he was making these runs in 1994, when he was in the middle of the ruins outside of Varaz, and it would move him deeply, is that he was checking the area with his infrared detector for body heat, and he ended up seeing a small candle being flickering out of a boarded up window. So he would go over there, knock on the door, and the candle got blown out immediately. He waited a few minutes. He would knock again. He would say, "Mr. Meyer, U.S. Army," and the door ended up opening. Inside, he ended up finding a young woman with her newborn baby and an elderly man. Even though, and it was clear that everyone was dirty and malnourished, so he went back to his car, got food, soap, water, everything for them. And then him and the old man just sat there in silence, and he would read his Bible and he read his Quran before he went back to his car. So he would end up eventually returning back to his car after he sat in silence with the older man and the woman and her child. And he would go back to his car, and it was about ready to get in a sleeping bag, and he had a knock on his window. It was that same woman with her baby, and she put the baby on his bare chest, and he said he would never forget that moving moment in his life, because he basically would probably save these people's life going back to his car, bringing them food and all the other supplies that they needed.
Literally was Michael and Kit. Literally.
Yeah. There was one time that he did recall in some of the sources that I did look at, there was one hill he was trying to traverse while the car was loaded down, but with all the extra weight, it was unable to make it up the hill. And so he took it as a sign from God that he needed the weight. So he ended up parking for the night, waited it out. The next day, first run up the hill, he made it just fine. He would end up actually moving over $3 million worth of humanitarian aid in 160 runs he made from Germany to Bosnia by the end of the Bosnian Civil War, which ended up taking the lives of 100,000 people between soldiers and civilians. He actually still is alive today. He's in his 70s, if I remember correctly.
Is the car on display somewhere?
He owns the car still to this day and has put 100,000 miles on it and has had to replace the engine once.
Wow.
Even though the military did take back the nitrous oxide system, he was a little upset by that because he loved that car. His wife hated it because she knew if she knew where he was, it was in that car driving around.
And why wouldn't you?
Right. And when I was doing my research on this, I did come across a YouTube comment that I did save. I have family who are from the Veras in Bosnia. They always told us stories about an American bringing them food, water, clothes, and medicine in a fast, dark car, usually at night. Now, I guess he wasn't an American. Thank you, Helge Meyer, for helping out those in need. I wish more people were like you.
Yeah, that's a really cool story.
Right. And when I did this episode for our regular feed, I ended it with a quote that he said from an article that he wrote that he did an interview with in a Danish newspaper in 2018. And I would also like to finish this story with that same quote. I want you to tell you that it is, and this is his own words, so it might sound a little goofy. I want to tell you that it is useful to do something, even if you are alone and the circumstances are fatal. You don't have to drive a Camaro into a war zone filled with medicine and toys for children. I could do that because I had military training and my special connections. It's about helping out on a daily basis down to the smallest thing. We all can do something to help out others.
I'm gonna try to get this guy, and if I can, I'm gonna have you. I'm gonna have you on for the episode. I'm gonna try to get this guy.
Oh yeah! Holy shit!
I'm gonna try. I don't know.
Okay,
but if
he has a Facebook
anybody,
and it's out there.
If anybody can do it, I can do it. I mean, it's Patreon, so
right.
Are you done with the story?
Yeah, that was the end of it. It was that quote there.
That's what
I made the joke on our feed, on our show when I read the story that I'm like fearing for my life now because I know he actually has a Facebook page because I did pull some pictures from it, and he actually shares stories and whatnot that he finds across the internet about his story. He doesn't shy away from this. This is like, I guess you could say, his crowning moment of his life, and he doesn't shy away from it. Like some people would like, it's no big deal, but he still has the car. He originally, at one point, he painted it bright orange, and then he
did he put a Confederate flag on the top of it?
No, he did not do that. He still had the light bar that had the lights on the front, and now, as I remember correctly, the car is currently back into a matte black paint, but not the Stealth Fighter paint. That's Salem. He's
freaking cool.
Yeah. Then this is one of those kind of stories that we set out to start telling people about, is things like this that not many people know about.
That's freaking cool. I mean, I feel fine saying, I've been able to pull off some interviews like with my old radio show, right. And I'm starting to do stuff like this with with CKCB, but there's a topic, there's something that Todd and I would always allude to about, if you know, or if it happens you'll know it, if it doesn't happen you won't know it, type of thing, about something that I have in mind. And I'm going to go ahead and say it on Patreon because at the moment we only have one Patreon subscriber.
Right.
But, hi. But you mentioned that you would never cover Ed Kemper.
Right. Well, Ed Kemper and the other big names like Ed Kemper himself.
Ed Kemper is part of what I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
What my idea is, because Ed Kemper is famous for doing interviews. He loves doing interviews. He loves to talk. So I want to have him on CKCB.
Right.
But I don't want to talk to him about what he did.
Right.
I want to write an episode about Herbert Mullins and have him on for a while and have him be on as a commentator. I want to hear what he has to say about Herbert Mullins because he hated that guy.
Really?
Yeah.
That'd be interesting that would be interesting to hear.
Hmm. I've made a couple of attempts to, for contact and everything, but I haven't gotten anything back from the facility
Yeah,
they
I'm
was
sure
with.
the
But
state of California has to approve it first anyway.
no, I don't. I don't think that's the case with Kemper.
Okay.
I mean, you always hear about these podcasters talking about like, oh, like podcast ads for these, like you're listening to your podcast, all of a sudden an ad comes up for another podcast or whatever.
Right.
Cross promotion. I've done it. You've done it, I'm
Right.
sure. But but like, okay, well, there was this one. It's just like I'm talking to, convicted killers, that are
Right.
serving life in prison or on death row
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. So it's just like it's possible to do. And
Right.
hearing Ed Kemper discuss Herbert Mullins would be fucking great.
Oh, I'm sure it would be.
But he's also he's also getting pretty old and he's having health issues now.
Right.
So, but the thing about it is, the hardest part about that is going to be keeping myself separate from him because of the fact that, like I said, I'm not talking about what he did. I know what he did,
Right.
but
Right.
but I want to hear him trash Herbert Mullins. I really want to pick his brain about Herbert Mullins, and and I if I'm too buddy with him,
Right.
the podcast listeners are gonna flip.
Right.
So it's just like, but at the same time, if I'm too standoffish, he's gonna tell me to fuck off.
Right.
So it's just like I gotta find a happy medium. But I'll
Right.
find it. I'll find it. I mean, but that would be so freaking great to hear Ed Kemper talk about, because he was in prison with Herbert Mullins. Like they weren't like cellmates, but they were
Right.
like next door neighbors.
Right.
And he hated Herbert Mullins. So
Right. And I mean, it's a possibility, but who knows how much, I mean, it can't be too incriminating, or he's saying you're trying to bait him basically and confessing to more. I mean, he's already, end of life at this point, and he's been serving a life sentence anyhow.
No, it's nothing to do about what he did. I mean, he didn't do
Right, I
anything
get
to
that.
Herbert Mullins, but Herbert Mullins was another prolific serial killer in California during that time.
Right. Like, he's been on my list forever, but Sarah does more of the true crime stuff. But like, when I do true crime, I go from 0 to 100 really fast.
Yeah.
Like, I've done James Huberty, which ended up killing over 20 people within a matter of 10 minutes in San Ysidro, California in 1984.
Who was that?
James Herbert Mullins. No, sorry. James Huberty, sorry. We're still just talking about, Mullins, and it was on the brain. No, James Huberty, he suffered mental illness and was trying to seek help for it, but he ended up causing a mass shooting in San Ysidro, California, about 300 yards away from his house at a McDonald's in 1984.
Oh, the McDonald's shootout? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, and it was in a matter of 10 minutes that he shot 25 people, if I remember correctly. He shot and killed 25, or at least 20, and injured 5 more. I don't remember exact numbers off the top of my head.
It makes me wonder if he was a serial killer that had gotten away with it, because that's total berserker mode right there.
No, it doesn't really fit the serial killer profile unless there's crimes out there at the same time that we're not aware of that he committed, but I doubt it, because he was suffering from mental illness at the time, and because of a typo from when he was trying to seek help happened, when they took his information, he never got a call back, so he felt like he had nothing else left to lose at that point, like most, mass murderers do.
But
another one of my favorite 0 to 100 cases is Anthony G. Kurtz is from Indianapolis, Indiana. He's also known as the Dead Man's Line. He ended up holding a mortgage broker hostage for 3 days with a short-barreled rifle attached to his neck by a piece of wire that ran down through.
That's a case I want to cover.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. There's a quite good documentary. I think it's on Tubi about it, and I use it as an outline.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
And
you're gonna have to message me his name because it's like I remember the story,
okay,
but I couldn't remember the name of the guy. But
yeah.
like, yeah, that's something I want to cover on CKCB. Yeah, moving forward.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that is one of the more unique cases that's ever came out of Indiana because his
There's another one.
plea of insanity actually brought nationwide change to the insanity plea, basically.
Well,
Because
there's another one where another one where I kind of remember what happened, but I can't remember the yeah, I can't remember the name. Um, guy, yeah, he's this homosexual couple. Um, the one part of this couple needs some sort of like operation or whatever. So the other, the other part of this couple, basically like robs a bank, like goes on a multiple banks robbery spree to
I
do
don't
it.
think I've heard of this one, but there's so much true crime stuff out there.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to hear of it.
See, I'm trying to move away from like the big cases. Like that's like our Patreon member, she when I told her, she was like, hey, you're the OG, want to have you on with us for an episode, but I want you to pick the topic, and she picked corn rake. I'm just like,
Okay.
I'd never heard of the case before.
Yeah.
And
I currently have 2 books on my desk for 2 cases that probably nobody's ever covered other than these 2 books. So you cannot find fucking anything on the internet about them other than these 2 books. You search the stuff, these 2 books come up.
well, don't tell me because I'll start researching it. I don't want to steal your thunder.
I say good luck trying to find stuff because I tried doing that too, and all I could find was these 2 damn books about it.
Okay, well, tell me then.
One is, I don't remember her name, but she's considered the Michigan Lizzie Borden. And another one is from South Bend, Indiana, called the Potato Masher Murder. And this isn't like your wire one we use today. This was like a heavy wooden club potato masher from like the early 1900s. But just by the name of that alone, I was like, what was this? So I started looking into it. Oh, I can't find anything.
You just made me think of Belle Gunnis. No, it wasn't Belle Gunnis.
No,
There's plenty of information out there about her.
Yeah, no, this wasn't her. This was like a local case, that husband killing his wife with a potato masher, basically. But it caught my interest enough to buy the book. So,
No, but corn rake. I mean, that case was so freaking out there. I mean, it was just so.
It was so
crazy, and yeah, it's just like I want to move toward that. I don't want to like the next episode that we have coming out. It's already recorded. Is Bernie Teed. Are you familiar with that one?
No.
Okay, well, it's the story that the movie Bernie, starring Jack Black, was made about.
Okay.
That's a crazy ass one, and it's most of my episodes right now are collabs because I don't have a co-host at the moment. But but that was done with Texas True Crime. Jessica, that's a
right.
really good podcast. She's awesome.
Right.
But and then the following week, I'm covering Derek Todd Lee, which is a hardcore like a heavy hitter serial killer from Baton Rouge, and I have Jody Plauché joining me on that one.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he picked that one. Well, and actually, Jessica, from whenever I have a guest on, I usually let them pick the case.
Right.
Because it's just, all of the episodes that I've had guests on, except for one, and that was Mad Dog Pruitt. I already had that one written, but every other collab episode that I've ever done was just like, I let the guest pick the topic, and
right.
and then Jody Plauché, you know who Jody Plauché is, right?
Yeah, that's like probably one of the more well-known cases because of the meme that comes around Father's Day.
Yep.
Of his father shooting Jeff. That's like the biggest case we've probably done. Sarah had heard of it, but she never knew the full details of it. I actually have
you covered that one?
Yeah, it's I forget. It's in June with Father's Day. It's called. We nicknamed it something about Disney something and a Cajun patron saint because from being Louisiana. So we have done that one.
We what happened with us is we covered Jody actually Mark from Mental Illness Theater, which we're very good friends with. Well, and we were talking, we're just like, okay, let's suggest some episodes. So he suggests Gary Plauché. And I had heard of the case, but I didn't know him by name or anything like that. How can you not hear of that case? So we do the episode, and we released it. And then 2 days later, Jody, his son, messaged me saying he liked the episode. He really, and he shared it too. So I messaged him back and everything. We start talking back and forth. I'm like, hey, can I interview you? And can you come on and interview? So he's like, yeah, sure. He's like, what do you want to talk about? He's like, because we'd obviously already done his dad's case.
Right.
So we're like, I'm like, well, I want to talk about the aftermath.
Right.
Because there's all sorts of episodes on podcast episodes about Gary, but there's nothing about what happened afterward with Jody. Some podcasts will touch on it, but nobody went in detail with it. That's what I want to do. He's like, hell yeah. He's like, yeah, I'll do that. So we did, and Jody is somebody I could legit be best friends with.
I did listen to your interview with it. I would laugh my ass off when you guys started talking about when his sister beat the shit out of Stormy Daniels.
Yeah.
And I had to message one of my friends that has his own podcast. I was like, dude, this interview I'm listening to, I just found out that Jody Plauché's sister beat the shit out of Stormy Daniels, and he just sent the laughing crying emoji to me 4 or 5 times in a row, in one line. But yeah, it was our episode 31, a Disney villain and a Cajun patron saint was the name of that episode. When Sarah went over.
When I was trying to, when you asked me earlier tonight if there was something, I was scrolling through your titles and everything, but I was driving, so there was nothing I could really.
Right.
I couldn't exactly click on the link and read the.
Yeah,
the
we
description.
started.
But I did see that title, and it didn't even occur to me that it might have been Gary Plauché.
Yeah, we started moving away from doing titles like that and actually legitimately just putting what they are about in there.
Yeah. But so
because it makes it easier for us to remember on what was in that episode when somebody's like, "Oh, I love episode blah blah blah." Because if they tell us my title name, I'm not going to remember all of them. But if we do it by what the title of the actual subject line is, I'll probably more likely remember it.
That makes sense. I have a photographic memory, so I don't. That's. But having a photographic memory like that is a blessing and a curse.
Right. Yeah, we haven't talked about having too many guests on yet because we don't have a Zoom or dial pad or anything like that. I mean, other than this account, we just have the free account for when we meet with anybody. Like we did Monday with Jerry Polly from Hillbilly Horror Stories. We met him actually back in September when we did a paranormal investigation at the Bell Mansion in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah, that's another one that I saw that I want to look at this, but I can't because I'm driving. I was looking for titles and but
yeah, that episode was basically just us talking about our personal experience on doing a paranormal investigation for the first time ever in our lives. That's something I always wanted to do as a kid because I was that weird kid that had all the books about ghost stories and stuff growing up.
Right. So Jody, after we do that interview, he contacts me again. And he says, hey, I'd like to come back on the show and maybe just cover an actual case. I'm like, okay, you got one in mind? He said, yeah, right. Derek Todd Lee from Baton Rouge. I said, okay, consider it done.
Yeah. So, we're going to have Jerry on Macabre Emporium at some point, or we're probably going to have you on at some point now, to return the favor basically. But when we interviewed with Jerry, I was so fucking wrecked with nerves because he has 22,000 followers, and I'm just holy shit, this could either go in one of two ways. Either like nothing changes or we start getting a huge following afterwards and people start dropping off at that point or whatever. So in that, he doesn't release it until Sunday. So we're still sitting here on pins and needles, basically waiting to see what's going to happen.
Well,
Because he said
we used to
see
release on Friday, but because of what's been going on and everything, it's just like, I was 3 days late releasing Peter Curtin Part 2, and that was because of the technical difficulties that I told you about before we started recording.
Right.
But in Peter Curtin Part 2, I was just like, you know what? I think just for the time being, we're gonna stick to releasing on Sunday, just for the time being. But
yeah, if you actually can pull getting Helgenmeyer on here, one, I'll be fucking shocked, and two, it's gonna be one hell of a logistics thing to get going because he lives in Germany.
Oh, so, I know. We'll probably have to do it like 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Yeah. And I'll probably still be sitting here racked with fucking nerves basically because like, holy shit, I'm about to talk to somebody I actually did a story on.
I'm definitely gonna try to. I'm gonna try. I mean, I want to talk to that guy. That guy seems like cool as shit, and he's like 2 time suck characters rolled up into one.
Right.
He's the God, like one of the Fighting Man people.
Right.
And he's also like the Jesus warrior. Like,
no, that's a different podcast I'm thinking of. Crime Fighting Jesus. No, it's Crime Fighting Santa Claus I'm thinking of, but that's a whole other thing.
No, but there's two characters that Dan Cummins came up with that he is like
Killer Jesus and Fighting Man.
Yeah.
But
I got a message one time like, oh, you're just ripping off Time Suck with your characters. I don't rip off Time Suck's characters. I don't do a Whipple commercial. I don't do I don't do Chicken Joe. I don't do I come up with my own.
Yeah, parallel thinking.
It's like if I'm ripping off Dan Cummins by coming up with my own characters that are my own creation, you know, like Dick Darwin, like Michael Lang, like Flaccid Jizzless, like you know, I mean, if I'm coming up with my own and everything, if that's ripping Dan Cummins off, then Dan Cummins ripped off every freaking radio show from, starting from the 1950s,
1930s,
30s, because it's just like, voice characters like that have been around for fucking almost 100 years.
I mean, like War of the Worlds is like one of the first times that's ever happened,
Yeah, I mean, we even did an episode like War of the Worlds where, completely made up. It was an April Fool's Day thing.
Yeah, like my buddies from Dark Windows podcast, he actually wrote a story about a fake freedom fighter during World War II from Greece, and it sucked me in. And he's like, "You know what the most surprising thing is about this guy is? I made it all up."
That's exactly what I did on my fucking episode. It was episode 50. I'm okay with saying this on Patreon episode because if they're paying to listen to me, they probably listen to like every one of the main episodes.
Right.
So, it is episode 50, the Dust Bowl Killer. That is completely made up. That is a complete fabrication. I made the whole damn thing up. And it was just like, and I know several authors and all of them messaged me and just like, you need to make that a book. You've already done the heavy lifting. All you have to do is fill it in. And I'm working on it, but I'm so busy with the freaking podcast, I can't even.
Right.
It's going to take me a while to write that damn book. I mean,
I've had a couple people tell me about what that whole intro to the Helgenmeyer story was. They really got him amped up to hear about him. Just because of the way I worded it and the whole description of everything, because almost all of our listeners are like our age group, between 30 and 40. And so they like connected with the whole book it thing at Pizza Hut and Terminator 2 being in the theaters and hearing the song Bryan Adams, and it really connected to him, and the whole description of how I bring Helge Meyer into the story. Because I sent that intro clip to a couple of people, and they're like, dude, I am so ready to hear the rest of the story. I'm like, well, you got to wait till Wednesday. So that's probably actually one of my most favorite stories to tell people when they're like, do you have a favorite episode to do? I'm like, yeah, Helge Meyer, God's Rambo. It's because it was one man and the things that he did for thousands of people.
Yeah. I mean, he's a freaking, he's a hero. I mean, he's like, it's like he's for different reasons, obviously, but he's up there on the Gary Plichet level.
Right.
I mean, but I'm gonna try my damnedest to get him. I mean, I'm gonna ask him, and if he says no, I'm gonna keep bugging him.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm pretty good at getting interviews. So,
right.
So it's
and I don't have the skill set to do interviews yet or anything like that. So, I mean, to do interviews and try it on my own or whatever, I'm not going to try and, you're going to say you're already going to try it, but
it's like a lot of my old radio shows episodes are gone. They were in the cloud, but they're not there anymore, which really makes me question how secure the cloud actually is.
Right.
But I've been thinking about like picking one because I have some of them on YouTube.
Yeah.
But the quality, the audio quality is just so fucking horrible. I don't even know if I want to do it. But I actually, it was just like, because part of it was like interviewing it, like mostly independent, but we had some national, like heavy metal bands come on. We had a handful of national, like signed big names as well, but the majority of it was indies. And I would, it's like I was the number 3 guy on that show. I was the producer. I was just the guy that made it go,
Right.
but I was still loving what I was doing. But when it came to the interviews, I would, then I became the number 1 guy.
Right.
And it's just like it was like a skill that I didn't even know that I had.
Right.
And when we first started having guests on and everything, it's like, my co-host at the time, when we first started, it was just 2 people. Later on, we added a 3rd person. But my co-host was, just like, I just was just coming up with questions right off the top of my head and everything. And it was just like, so it's just like, okay, well, interviews, Bill's the lead guy.
Right.
But,
like one of the things I had joked for when we did the start, because I think it was Morbid had just recently had an interview with Tobias Forge from Ghost. So I kept making the joke.
Wait, they interviewed him? I didn't know that.
Yeah, because Sarah brought it to my attention because I don't listen to Morbid anymore. But she still follows them on Facebook, and they had an interview with Tobias Forge because apparently one episode when they first one of them discovered Ghost and were giving Ghost so much praise, and they got their attention from Tobias Forge. He was like, I want to come on for an interview. So yeah, they got to interview Tobias Forge. So I've been making this joke with Sarah, said if we're going to shoot for something like that, we're going to do it, as with some bigger, well-known band like Rammstein or something like that.
Sabaton.
Yeah. Oh, one of our listeners, he would absolutely lose his shit if that happened.
It probably wouldn't.
One of our listeners lives in Glasgow. He's a huge Sabaton fan. He actually let me know, since he knows that you've listened to some of our episodes, how I put background music in, with our telling of Vassovich Fortress. I used an instrumental track of Attack of the Dead Men on that one. And he let me know it's you don't have to worry about copyright as long as you're telling the story that goes with that song. They're not going to come after you for it. I'm not worried about it anyway because I'm not trying to monetize anything right now.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't be hard to get Parr, the bass player. Probably wouldn't be hard to get him.
Well,
I'll work on that too. We'll cover like I don't know, and yeah, you'll be a guest on that one as well. And by the way, people, we're just rambling right now. The episode's
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, I get actually seeing it's 11 o'clock now. I need to get off here and get ready to head to bed actually because I got to be up around 6. So
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. Tell people about your
thank you
podcast
for having us.
once again. Absolutely.
From Macabre Emporium podcast, we release episodes every Wednesday on lesser known titles of true crime and paranormal, weird history, things like Sarah and I shared today. You won't hear the big brand name serial killers. You can say like Ed Gein, Ergine, depending on pronunciation. This goes both ways. Ed Kemper, it's true, but I've heard it the 2 different ways that it's supposed to be the correct way. But anyhow, or Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez. You're not hearing those people's names other than points of reference. You're going to hear the lesser known people from us. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Google, wherever you're getting your podcast at.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I mean, I could have kept going.
Yeah,
I was having fun. I was having fun.
I could too, but I know it's getting late. It's a week. It's a school night,